Hey, Scott.
Hey, Mark.
We're on some episode number
Yeah,
at this
who
point.
knows? We don't even know anymore.
We are on episode 17.
Oh, my.
This is a fun one. I'm excited for this because we have kind of a refocus on some tighter episodes after the monstrosity that was episode 15.
Yeah, which will eventually be like episode 20 or 21 or something like that.
No, the replacement 15.
Oh, yeah.
Because the replacement for that we are recording soon, and that should be coming out as episode 18, I believe.
Will it be 18?
I think so. Regardless, welcome to Board All the Time and our strange pre-conversation logistics.
Hey, we have to fill the content with something.
We do. It's true. So, since we are filling with content and conversation, let's jump right on into it. Scott, what has been on your table?
Well, besides the ones that we just got to play tonight before we started recording, I got to sit with my local gang and we played Frosthaven. And we
Finally got it back on the table.
We got it finally back on the table. Schedule's cleared up. I was honestly in a better headspace.
Goes a long way.
Looking for work is not fun, but I'm confident that no problems are going to happen. So since my day was free and both the guys that I normally play with, their days leading up to it were free, we literally got together and played for 5 hours because we'd only gotten... I know you don't care for the game, but like...
5-hour gaming session, still a 5-hour gaming session.
We had some food and drinks and did a lot of different strategies. And my goodness, that was a blast. We still didn't accomplish the scenario that we're trying to fix.
The one that you've been hammering against for months?
We're trying to finish an arc for a character story. So how Frosthaven works differently than Gloomhaven, which I could talk more later. But actually, I'm going to. We just keep hitting this snag. And it's like, okay, do we try to run it? Do we sit and fight? We don't think this is working. Okay, we don't think our character combination's working. So let's go back to town, do all our town actions.
So is it a problem of Frosthaven on its own? Is a scenario glitchy? Is there something with luck, or is it just bad strategy? What do you think's going on there?
Well, I think right now it's what we figured out. The first strategy just does not work with the characters that we have.
Sure, okay.
That we've been trying to plug away with. The problem is that the one character that we have to have, because it was a bonus scenario and he happened to draw it, it's with a character that kind of almost has a disadvantage in the situation that we're playing in, so we're kind of struggling with it. And so I'm the one that's kind of fluxing back and forth between characters, like, does this one work? Does that one work?
Are you able to achieve other content while you're trying to figure this one out, or are you just stuck on this bonus scenario?
So we've bounced away. We did one other adventure. We did one other scenario, and then we've come back to it. The problem is that, so you have achievement cards. If you don't finish the mission, even if you get everything right with the achievement, you don't get the bonus. And so we're just kind of sitting there. We still get our XP. If we go back to town, we can take the coins and the materials with us. If we decide to stay, you can just keep your coins. You don't get to take the materials with you. You have to re-find them all. So, like, we've been getting some money, and it's just one of those things of like, okay, what's going to work? So we've pulled out a character from Gloomhaven. I'm running that one because I know it pretty well. We're going to run that a couple times, see how well it does. And then I have an idea for another Gloomhaven character to port in and see if that one works. Because I think that one will work even better. We're thinking flood the deck with curses, which is automatic misses since you don't play the game.
Yeah.
So that's been my big one, other than we just got done playing Far Away, which that was a genius game. I like that one. What else has been on your table?
Well, Far Away has been on mine, but it's been a fairly short amount of gameplay that I've had, partially because if you remember the episode that I released a couple weeks ago, the review for Isla and Something Shiny, I ran that campaign twice within not a long amount of time, but I play a lot of that. And, at this point, hopefully you've listened to it. That was such high highs, just crashing and burning on the bottom, and I just can't possibly recommend it. Other than that, it's been more Tapestry and more Feast for Odin, mostly on Board Game Arena. It has been harder to table individual things right now.
Right.
Part of it is learning all the stuff we have coming in from publishers and all the Kickstarters coming that we're getting excited about. In fact, I should have the new Planet Unknown expansion on Friday, which I am stoked for. So not a ton has actually been played. Far Away has been my go-to, like, I have 10 minutes, I'm going to play this. And I taught it to you, and you looked at me and said, okay, I get it. again. Like, it's so good.
I mean, just the fact that that game was a quick, what the first round was maybe 15 minutes with the teach, just because I was like, I wanted to make sure I knew what the heck I was doing. And then once I realized, oh, I kind of messed this up. Okay, I now know what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then I won.
Yeah.
Plus it was luck of cards.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, you know, I was actually planning on talking about this later. So
We'll talk about it later, but I mean, good talk.
There's a lot of really cool moments in Faraway. All right, Scott. So for our topic of the week this week, we decided to go a little more into something we've talked about really a lot, but never going specifically into. And that is when we are looking at a game's theme, what does that mean? What does it encompass for our approach to a game? What do we look for? Kind of all that type of stuff. We are very much theme forward people, and I am more of a mechanism can salvage a theme, but you are very much, I need a strong theme.
Yeah. I mean, we always joke, we call me the theme queen for a reason, and I think it's great that we're getting ready to talk about this. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I've tried to break the conversation down into a couple of categories just that way we don't drift too far off topic as you and I are wont to do.
What?
What?
No.
So the other day.
Exactly.
So the first thing, this is a straightforward one, and I think it's a good baseline for the rest of the conversation, but what themes do you like? Are there any themes that put you off where you won't engage with them? What actually draws you in when it comes to a theme? And I guess we should know we're talking like thematic setting or, you know, there's all the various arguments you can make, but we're using theme as the overall encompassing term of this is the setting of the game. These are the artwork and kind of the implied, this is the idea of the game.
Yeah. I mean, one, it's always nice to go into an IP. I mean, because you have to look at IPs. That is always a theme right then and there. Then also, when it comes to theming, there's really nothing that's like off the table. I don't have anything in my collection that is gangster theme or mafia theme. I don't have a lot of Far East stuff, and I think it's just nothing's attracted my attention other than Suro. But I mean, that's very loosely just because of artwork.
Sure.
I don't have anything that is Western other than the Great Western Trail. Outside of that, I mean, there's not necessarily a theme that is off limits.
Sure.
There are stuff that I'm kind of like, that I might like, this looks kind of interesting, and then I need to do like more research to find out where the mechanics and what's the gameplay.
Sure. It's interesting you mention kind of gangster, mafia, Wild West, because in looking at my collection, I really don't have much of that either, despite those being themes that I generally love in media. But when I find in board gaming, they're almost always high player conflict, take that type of themes.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before, that mechanically we don't like a lot of really negative direct player interaction with each other. If it happens incidentally, it happens incidentally. But a game like Carson City, which I've heard is phenomenal, I've also heard is very mean. So I've never really engaged with that one.
Yeah.
When it comes to any themes putting me off, we're talking mostly like strongly demonic themes. I will say, like, I like the idea of being a paladin, going in and chasing down stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, I have Time of Legends Joan of Arc over there, and I actually have everything from the first printing except for the expansion where you play as the demonic forces specifically, because it's such a dicey idea that it's hard for me to say like, hey, we're going to play this game and hopefully you're cool with this. So I think when it comes to that type of thing, I'm not really all in on it. But when it comes to even something silly and simple like gnomes, I don't care about gnomes.
Yeah.
And there was a game that came out at Gen Con last year that absolutely swept the convention. And it turns out I actually know the designer, Eamon Anderson. It's Gnome Hollow. Gnome Hollow has been getting really great reviews. But I look at that theme and I'm like, I know even if I end up liking the game, I'm never going to pick it because I just can't stand that theme.
Yeah, I mean, when you're sitting there and you're looking at some themes, you know, I think I have to be in the gaming space. I have to be in a local game store or be looking at a collection and sit there and be going, yeah, this is nothing I'm interested in. But like when I go back to talking about IP, so Alice in Wonderland, Marvel, DC, even when you're going into like historic IPs, so when you're recreating certain events, I'm a little bit more critical when it comes to those. So, you know.
It's interesting that you brought up the historical as well, because if I look at a game like Crusaders, which we've talked about on the pod in the past. I
Yeah.
love Crusaders because it specifically addresses that idea of, we understand what the Crusades were. They give you that background. They say, if you want to learn more, here's ways to learn more about it. But we are looking at the abstract of how did essentially the Crusades assist the development of a global economy. I am okay with that in that case. Whereas if you look at something like Paladins of the West Kingdom, where it is very specifically labeled out where you are crusading and you are fighting off barbarians or invaders or whatever they're called. It's been a really long time since I played Paladins. But that approach to the theme really can keep me away as well. Because if I am looking at something historical, I either want it to be where I know, like Axis and Allies, right? You know, you have the historically seen good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
But I know in that case, even if I am on the Axis team, it is for the game and we are trying to reconstitute a war that took place already. And it's not any kind of revisionist history. It's just, we're fighting the war.
Right.
Whereas something that says, hey, here's an alternate history and we're going to make this kind of icky, like that is something that I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah. You have to be very careful when it comes to certain things. I mean, look at viticulture. Like they put in that whole, then they put a whole
Viticulture
thing,
World.
Viticulture World, sat there, put a whole thing in there talking about, hey, these are the things that happened. And, you have to be very careful and very communicative about those type of things that have happened. So
it's why I generally try to avoid treasure hunting themes or anything like that anymore. Because when you look at it, we have this idea of like Indiana Jones is awesome. And then you really sit down and think like, ooh, tomb raiding is actually pretty icky.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I actually really like Escape the Curse of the Temple, because literally you are sitting there, you've gathered everything that said, I've taken all this treasure and everything. You have to put it back. Otherwise you can't get out of the temple. So it's a fun inversion of the theme, which is why I like that one. But any type of morally kind of morass-like topic, if it's not being handled well, if it's being handled flippantly, then I'm totally out.
exactly.
Not to go into a conversation about colonialism and board gaming, which we totally could, but that's not this topic. So to look at the flip side of that, what is a theme that you do like? What pulls you in? What do you look at and you go like, okay, I'm immediately going to look at this, even if I don't end up buying it?
I mean, IPs.
Sure.
So things that have already a strong presence. So whether we're looking at Alice in Wonderland, the Alice in Wonderland games that have been done by Druid City automatically grab my attention. Even the Unmatched series.
Sure.
Those are very interesting because you're like, oh, look, this is Jekyll and Hyde and Aladdin and Alice is in that one as well. Like that is very interesting. Even the Ravensburger games, even within those, I mean, they're very, very interesting. The fact that you sit there and they've pulled classic monsters from the classic movie screens and then even went to the North American mythos that we have here and then did Greek and now they're getting ready to do Dungeons and Dragon monsters. Like, I think those are very, very interesting. They're very neat to look at. They make me want to approach the game.
Sure.
Bright, shiny colors make me very, very happy. I think that's one of the reasons why I like Calico.
That makes sense.
It's very
it's a lot of pastel, but
yeah, it's a lot of pastel, but it's still it has a nice vibrancy. It's another reason why I do like Cascadia. I mean, because it's nice and colorful. It gives me a nice eyesight. Like, even looking at the back of the box, you're like, oh, that has a nice little table presence, even in their, structured photo.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Things that are, just by looking at it, you kind of already got a idea with what the game is going to be.
When I was thinking this through, like we've talked about before, I have a huge love of sci-fi and space themes. I like a lot of really high fantasy, high sci-fi. When you look at a lot of contemporary themes, I actually really don't like them. And when you're getting into city builder games or whatever, I actually prefer, let me go backwards or forwards. I don't love a lot of like, I'm just going to develop a modern city. Suburbia has never been my thing. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But when I'm looking at big space themes or something that gives me a lot to where I can separate myself from that potentially historical bent, that contemporary idea of this is the way things need to be. I like things that give me a lot of space to play in, or just, let me explore a weird idea. I love dystopian. I love cyberpunk. And so anything with that is pretty immediately going to get me to look at it. Even beyond if the mechanisms don't necessarily match to what I would like, I'm still going to look at it because you never know. I mean, that's the entire point of why did I play this, right?
Right.
Of maybe the theme will carry me along enough and now I'm going to find something that I wouldn't normally enjoy.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at it, I do generally prefer sci-fi over fantasy.
Okay.
But I have certainly nothing against fantastic games. We just got the new game from Duxomnium into our studio, LaFleur. Very excited about that. And that's something that if it weren't for my wife and the relationship that we've been in and the things that she loves, I certainly wouldn't have ever looked at it, because Regency era, or rather in LaFleur's case, the Rococo era of building up a French estate and using flowers to develop your gardens and attract visitors. Like, it's a very interesting theme to me now from that historical bent, but also just because it's something that I have come to love because of my wife in a way that I have so many Regency and Victorian era themes back there that I wouldn't normally have otherwise.
Right.
Before I was married.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think of all the things that between you and Jason and my other friends have influenced me on. Gosh, I remember, I used to just like pull games. You'd be like, ooh, this looks cool. And I would just buy it.
Yep.
And it might hit the table once or twice. And now I take a little bit more time and sit there and look at stuff and going, okay, this is the reason why I'm grabbing this. And I can understand immediately why I've done it, you know?
Well, and that actually beautifully leads us into the next question of, do you consider an audience for a theme of a game?
Oh, yeah. Some obviously no, because like if no one wanted to play Dice Throne, I would still own Dice Throne.
Yeah.
You know, there's certain creators that I'm going to continue to support, even though I know the game's probably not going to ever hit my table, which makes me a little sad. But
I have a couple of those.
But when I do look at games, it's like, yeah, I need this one because Mark is going to love it for this reason, and he'll probably murder me at it, but I don't care. Oh, Jason will like this one, so I can't wait to get to play on the stream with him because he'll dig this. And yeah, I mean, you can't help but look at your audience. I mean, when I was younger, the majority of the games that I bought were party games because every weekend I was getting together with one group of friends.
Absolutely.
And we were just wanting to play something silly, have it be stupid, not a huge teach, not a ton of rules, and just laugh and be silly and dumb.
Sure.
And so that's all what I bought, you know?
Yeah, I've definitely gotten to the point where, and we've talked about this in a roundabout way of what games are in a collection for what situation, but there are certainly themes that I've engaged with, and let's bring it back up, the Victorian, Regency, Elizabethan, period history, where even if it is not a strict historical game, something like Deadly Dowagers, I own because I know I have an audience for it.
Right.
Because it's a ridiculous game, but while I can get Natalie and them into it, and you would probably enjoy Deadly Dowagers, I think Jake would approach it and be like, okay, I'm going to try to have this, but he's not going to care about the theme.
Right.
And because I think of the way that we teach games and the way we introduce games, the fact that we both lead theme first, it helps drive up that excitement. And so if I know that I have a person that's not going to be excited about the theme, it's going to be a lot harder to table it.
Right. Even let's look at my game of choice, Dice Throne. You know you have terrible dice luck.
Yeah.
You don't like the take that portion of it.
Yep.
You are, because I was able to convince you with how I ramped it. Like, yep, I'll give it another shot, and we did.
Yep.
And we know what your opinion is on it.
Yep.
And then on the flip side, we know what your opinion is of missions.
Yeah.
But that right there, just knowing of the mechanics, if I wasn't theme heavy, theme forward with what was going on, you'd probably been like, nah, I'll pass.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of games that you have introduced to me that you're like, okay, so this is the theme. That's how you always introduce it. Like, I have to sell this to you as if I'm on an elevator or Scott's not going to be interested. And you're absolutely right.
And there are certainly games that I love that I will teach of like, and here's the theme, and it's a theme.
Loosey-goosey,
like,
yeah.
It's not really there, but I at least have a framework to start off of.
Yeah.
And anytime that I have something weird or unique, that just means that my audience for it is going to be more easily engaged, because how often can you say, okay, so we're in a gladiatorial arena, but we're not the fighters, we're the audience.
Right?
That automatically just says, wait, hang on, what?
Yeah.
And now I know that the game itself, Natalie probably wouldn't care about it, but if I sit there and say, okay, this is a gladiatorial combat game where we are trying to influence them, and it's sci-fi, cyberpunk, I already have Jake in.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely have games for people because of the theme. Now, something like Lacuna, where it's just, hey, we're going to throw some things out where we're going to play measure the distance the game for 5 minutes, it's an abstract.
It's an abstract.
Like, abstracts are tough to do that with. There are thematic ones, certainly, but when you take those out of there, on the whole, yeah, I'm going to look at who is going to want to play this, who's going to get excited by this theme just beyond my own initial stuff, because I know I can be as excited about a game as I want, but if I can't get anybody to play it with me, bummer.
Yeah. I mean, there's been plenty of times that you've put stuff on the table and I've looked at you like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it was a harder sell. And we've had both. It's been a good experience and it's been a bad experience. I think that's the whole thing is, knowing your audience. That's the best way to figure out what games to pick up.
So when we're looking at if a theme doesn't grab you, and we've talked about this at length with the idea of Century, Spice versus Golem. So clearly your answer is probably going to be yes on this. But if a game's mechanisms are strong enough, if they swap the theme, are you willing to re-engage with a game for something that you do not like? So let me start here because I also posited a question to you before we start recording of, will a designer's past games, especially their previous themes, prevent you from engaging with new themes? And the reason these two lock together is Alexander Pfister.
Okay.
I generally cannot engage with Alexander Pfister's games thematically, which is ironic because you mentioned Great Western Trail earlier. Mm-hmm. He has a game out there called Moonbasa. And Moonbasa, when I look at it on a mechanical level, I am 100% sure I would be obsessed with.
Okay.
But the theme of the game is you are the European corporations and companies coming in and colonizing Africa and dividing it up. And yeah, you're not dealing directly with the inhabitants that you're displacing, but a lot of people will just hand wave and be like, you're on safari. No, you're not. It is a theme I've never been able to engage with. And anytime I look at an Alexander Pfister game, almost always it's that case of, ugh. And there was a re-release of it a couple years ago.
Okay.
Of Mombasa that I was very excited about because the number one argument against it was what I just said. A lot of people refuse to engage with the game because of that thematic integration. When Skymines came out at, I believe, Gen Con 22, we were all very excited because, Space Mombasa. And then we all got to look at it. It's like, oh crap, it's just Space Mombasa. Because you are mining on a moon that literally is still the same shape as Africa. And thematically, instead of being like the Dutch East Indies Corporation, you're now a future crypto mining corporation. Like, it just, everything about it was just a total whiff. And so when I look at something like that, like I'm not going to engage with that theme. That is one where the theme is so strong, I can't engage with it, no matter how strong the mechanisms are.
Yeah, when you're sitting there dealing with anything that's going to be icky. Yeah, like I have a problem with some expansionistic games and stuff like that, or games that don't honor the history it comes from. Yeah. You need to put a disclaimer. Like, hey, this is what happened during this period of time. Like, if they don't, I'm just kind of like, yeah. Yeah. But when you're sitting there talking about, is there a designer? I mean, there are games that I'm like, ooh, I can't wait for this to come out, and then find out that it's not that great of a game, and you're just kind of like, oh. And so there is some hesitancy, and I do even more research, and I put it on pause. I mean, I can already think of one right now where I went, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get that because of what happened before it. Yeah. And which we can save that for a future conversation, but it puts you on pause. I mean, especially when you're sitting there dealing with something like money. Yeah. I would even be like, with a friend, be like, this is what I had problems with the last game that this person did. Mm-hmm. So like,
Well, and when you look at something like Foundations of Rome versus Foundations of Metropolis, it's apparently a Century Spice situation all over again, where Foundations of Rome is a big, huge, ridiculously lavish production from Arcane Wonders, where at its heart it is a very little polyomino game. Okay. But it's like a $200 game because all the polyominoes are structured 3D buildings. And so it just looks gorgeous on the table. This past Gen Con, they released Foundations of Metropolis, which is the $50 version of the game of flat polyomino tiles.
Okay.
From what I understand, exact same game. There's some like special ability buildings that aren't there, but on the whole, same game. But that's one where removing the production, because it is more fun to play with big chunky buildings. Right. Like I said, I don't really care for contemporary games. So I am more drawn to Foundations of Rome, despite it being the same thing, because I want to see the big chunky mini of the Forge of Hephaestus or whatever that they have in there. So for me, this is one that I will replace a game thematically if I think that it will be more successful for me or for a person that will be playing with me.
Going back to Century, looking at themes. Spice Road.
They're both pasted on.
Yeah. When you're looking at Century Spice Road or Century Golem Edition, that very first box, same game, just different skins. Golem Edition does it for me. Yeah. Because also, like, there's no real talk about what goes in on the Spice Road. Like, that was not a good trek.
Like the cinnamon to saffron to whatever. I don't even remember what they all were. It's
I don't
just
either.
Like, oh, it's red, green, yellow, and brown.
Right.
Yeah. Where in Golem, because there's just, here's some chunky crystals. What do they mean? They're chunky crystals.
They're chunky crystals.
And, so
this is worth more because it's prettier.
So that's something that I definitely look at of if I can replace a theme to be something more successful, I will do so.
Yeah, same.
Last real question I have on this topic is, can you have too much of a given theme?
Ooh.
Because there are those moments where I want to play a fantasy game. I have 50 fantasy games. Which one do I want? Versus I've got 4 and I know that I want to play a fantasy game and this is the one for this moment. So can you have too much of a given theme?
I think it's entirely possible if you have mechanics that are repeating itself, if you're having a player count that repeats itself, if you have like end game scoring that's the exact same, like if there's certain things that do the exact same thing as another game, why? Yeah. Why have it? If there was a space span, if there was space span, if all of a sudden Stonemaier came out with space span and we were having spaceships, depending on how they did it, that might be something that we would enjoy a whole lot more because we both really enjoy space, who knows? I mean, going back to that, okay, we had Wingspan very first time. Had it been space themed, I probably would have grabbed it first off. I wasn't a nature person before. Now I've come to like nature-based games.
Because of it. And it's one of those interesting things where space is approachable for gamers and nerds.
Yep.
But what made Wingspan the blow-up success it was just birds.
It was just birds.
And you had people that were not gamers like, I want to play the bird game. And so it was such a smart choice to go that nature route in a way that would have never really been a huge hit beforehand. And then, we know the history of it since then. But
yeah, I really think a lot of people that bought it because they were sitting there thinking, oh, this is something I could play with my parents. Because when that game came out, let's see, how long ago was that?
2019, 6 years.
My mom, that'd be something that she'd be more interested in. And that was the draw, was like, oh, hey, because my mom often says, why don't you play games with me? Well, I look at her, I'm like, Mom, I love you, but like a lot of the games that you want to play are euchre and gin rummy and stuff like that I don't necessarily just want to play but with you. And I go, these other games I have are a little complicated. Wingspan's almost worth the attempt, at that point. But I mean, it was one of those things like, well, I could bring this to you. It's a lot of birds and they're really pretty and they're drawn like the actual bird.
For me, when it comes down to, is there too much of a theme? Yes, there can be. I think my only exception to it, weirdly, is underwater themes, because there's so many different ways to approach underwater, even a way that feels very different from space, because Aquatica and Abyss and underwater cities, very different approaches.
True.
Very different. But when I look, just because they're sitting on the table, which is why I keep going back to them, but I have Botany and Lafleur sitting here. Same designers, same company, everything. The first is you are taking a global expedition for finding flowers. And it's one of those where, harkening back to an earlier point of the conversation, if they hadn't addressed the biological colonialism there, it could be a real issue for them. But they did address it, and they talked about, we are looking at this from the historical perspective of what was happening with the estates where it all got brought back to. But if you want to learn more about it, here's, resources for it. Whereas Lafleur is just, you're developing your estate. They are different enough games, and I'm very excited to try Lafleur and compare them. But there is part of me that would say, if these were close enough in mechanisms, their theme is already fairly close together because of that Regency era, Rococo era, we're going to use this particular time frame, and they're based around flowers and they're based around that stuff. I could easily see one of them going, but I think because the gameplay is different enough, I can say there's not too much of that theme right there. But it very much does come down to, within a theme, what are the games themselves doing? Because if they are too similar, then I'm going to pick the one I like more.
Right. Which totally makes sense.
So, because it's a thing that we keep going back to, is there are just too many excellent games to keep the good ones.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Cool. Well, this one was fun because we constantly talk about how we're so theme heavy, and I like the fact we were able to have this conversation.
I think also us having this conversation means that other people are going to be like, oh, okay. They see why we are so theme heavy.
Yeah. Cool. So normally we would do, why did I play that right here?
Yeah.
And it will certainly be coming back because, we can't not force each other to play terrible games. But you asked for something to kind of pep you up and just have a good time with. And so now we're going to return to a very underused segment of why did it take so long to play that?
Yeah.
And this is Aquatica. We mentioned a couple times in our last segment, but this is a game that I have spoken very, very highly of to you multiple times in the past. And I think you had a genuinely good time with it.
Yeah, so we tried this before, back in November, and there was just a lot of stuff going on, and I did not enjoy it. It was definitely going to be, like, if we were going to use that play, this would have been, why did I play that? And you posed the question to me, like, hey, we need to do a segment, and I want to bring back Aquatica. Are you up to playing it again? And I went, I sat on it for a little bit, and I went, yeah. I was unfortunately playing Diablo 4 because the brand new season came out, and Diablo 4. But I sat there and I looked at the question and I went, yeah, I definitely want to play this again because it, like Dune Imperium, I wanted to have a second playthrough to be like, is it me or is it the game? Mm-hmm. It was definitely me. Which I could be very adult and mature and sit there and say I was the problem. And yeah, no, I had a really nice time with it. And just because I happen to beat you, it doesn't hurt, but
It's true. So Aquatica, for those of you that don't know, is from Arcane Wonders and Cosmodrome Games. It was brought over by Arcane Wonders in early 2020. And you are underwater kingdoms that you have whoever your ruler is, or if
you're the lord or the lady. Yep.
And if you play with one of the expansions, you can swap that out or you can change them out. But generally speaking, you're going to have a leader card in your hand. But Aquatica is a hand management tableau building game, kind of the way Concordia is. Mm-hmm. And I know you haven't played Concordia yet, and we need to correct that, frankly. It's a super cool game.
Yeah, how dare you?
So it uses that same hand mechanism of you are going to play a card and then do what it says, and then eventually you need to pick all your cards back up. Where this game is very unique is it has triple layer player boards because you are going to be either buying or conquering locations. Essentially, you're just generating one of two resources, and that's the way you're going to buy it. But the actions themselves refer to one of the two resources. And you may have effects from the locations you've already added to your kingdom or from any of the manta rays that you have that you can flip over. The toy factor on this game is very high because of the very cool boards, and you have gorgeous art. It is just so pretty to play with. And then you're looking at all the mantas, and there's fun to mess with and all the things. Mm-hmm. And you are going to be trying to get the end game to occur through one of a few different ways. There's a set of goals that you can go for. You can try to run out one or two of the decks. Depending on the expansions you're playing, it can change as well. But you are just simply playing a card, modifying how much stuff you have to do with that card, and then taking the effect of it. And at the end of it, and this is where you ended up beating me, and we were actually having a small conversation about this after the game, of I love controlling the tempo of a game.
Yep.
You realized that, and you were able to short me that one turn. And we talked about this with Beyond the Sun as well, of inevitably, if I am not kind of controlling the speed of the rounds, if I am not ahead of where I want to be, I will get brought low by a single turn. And that's what happened here, because had I gotten the one more turn the way I was expecting, we would have tied.
Yes.
So,
I would have broke the tiebreaker.
I think it would still had the tiebreaker.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a cool game because there are a lot of different ways to victory. And then the game itself has two very strong expansions. Mm-hmm. Cold Water just added in a fifth player and a fifth player color. So there are now white locations out there, which thematically are Arctic waters. So there are more frozen kingdoms and frozen locations. Some really neat stuff there. And then at Gen Con this past year, they released Coral Reefs, which added in coral. Changed out the player board, added in a whole bunch of extra stuff. Some really neat ways to interact with the game. And in fact, you have not gotten to play it just base. You've only played it expand.
Yeah, because that was the, when we sat and talked about it, I was like, I want to make sure that we played it the same way that we played it back in November, because those are the rules I know. And it was going to give me the best gauge of, is it the game? Is it me? I did. I really dug it. The idea of trying to purchase fellow denizens of the sea and then taking their coral reef with them. That gives a nice little power on top of my player board. And then, of course, the locations and trying to sit there is like, oh, if I scout and push this up, will the thing still be there one more turn? And then I can get that extra piece of coral to throw into my reserves. Lots of nice little mechanisms to sit there and try to control things. And for me, it was... for this game, I went probably the hardest I've ever gone at it for conquering to get the locations that gave you extra mana rays. Mm-hmm. Because it was very easy to be like, cool, I have an extra mana ray. Oh, cool, I got this. I got the one accomplishment. I can throw my piece up there. Yeah, you beat me to it, but I have a manta ray to replace it. Mm-hmm. So I'm good to go.
Yeah, this past play may have been the one where I focused on wild mantas the least. I only had 3, I think, left at the end of the game, which is including my starter ones, which is really wild.
Yeah, the fact that you didn't have that many extras, and I was sitting there with like 6, I went super hard.
Yeah.
We each had different strategies. I sat there was like, okay, I'm going to go for these big number ones. Yeah, they're a little harder, but then I had the little locations that allowed me to level them up relatively quickly, where you had grabbed the piranha, which that piranha guy was like, yeah, you get to sit there and cash in all your finished cards as long as they were 3 or under. And the moment that you had one that was over that, you were done. And you had to stop. And I was just like, you turned in 6 cards that way. And I was just
5,
like, you did 5? Okay.
Well, because you can only do 5.
You could only do, yeah. And I was just like, holy cow. Well, you did it twice. So it was like one time was 3, and like one time was 2, or it was two groups of 3s.
Yeah, I used that piranha a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah. And I was just like, man. So, yeah, I had to go for the bigger ones because you were going to get a lot of little ones.
It's true.
It was phenomenal. And the fact that, the other thing was I wasn't super worried what you were doing. I was paying more attention to like your speed and knowing that, like I said, I know how you play. So that's the lucky thing for me is I do know how you play. And I was like, if I could be a little faster with making things move, that was going to be great for me. And it worked out for me in the end, but might not necessarily work out for me the next time I try to do that.
No.
And that's why it's a good game. It's a gorgeous game.
It's a weird game to explain. And it's for as few moving pieces as there are rules-wise, it just is a kind of a weird teach because it does things in so unique of a way. I've never played another game that has, here is your mandatory action, and that everything else you do is modifying that action. Mm-hmm. And the fact there are multiple ways around it. When you're looking at, am I going to buy a location? Am I going to conquer a location? Do I have space for it? Maybe I don't have space for it now. If I defend the location, which comes out of the Coral Reef expansion, am I going to have space for it when it does come to me? Because that could be rushed at me. And just that you were sitting there sliding these cards within these super cool boards and...
Never seen anything like that.
And just trying to get around, there's an empty circle on this location, which means I need a power to push it up. So what can I get on the board, which will then allow me to use all my stuff? If you like combos and you like building super combo games, there's so much of that here.
Yeah, I don't think I've played a game that has so many combos. Because like you were talking about dealing with the bubbles. I was so worried about the bubbles. I had either 2 or 3 of my extra mantas just had the push-up space. Just so I could make sure that when those bubbles hit. Because like the bigger ones had a bubble in them. Yep. Most of them was like, here's an ability, then it's a bubble. Here's an ability, then it's a bubble. And you're like...
Yeah, on those 8 or 9 cost ones, they have a lot of it. Now the abilities they have on them are very strong. And they almost always give a mana at the end.
Oh, yeah.
But you got to get through them.
But you have to get through them. The one that I scored was 9 points. It was like three to conquer, then a bubble. 3 to conquer, but then a bubble. And it was just like, it was going to be a slog. But luckily I had gotten one of the manas that gave me a push 2. So like I was there, or push 1. And it was, okay, I'm able to push this along. I'm able to do what I need.
The idea of tactics versus strategy, of what am I going to try to do right now versus what am I going to do long term. And this is one of those games out there that rewards both simultaneously, where you can build for a long-term strategy like I was doing of try to get little locations, but this guy came out of the character row, that means I can get him and then I can do this other stuff. Neat, I get to adjust my tactics on the fly. There's a lot that is able to be interacted with in a game that is an hour or less. Routinely, there's a 45-minute game whenever I play it.
Yeah, I think the only reason why I think we ended at around 55 minutes, and that was just because it was like, okay, how do I do this again? And then it was like, oh yeah, it's this way. Okay, cool. And just, you gave me the book, and I sat there, looked at the iconography, which was very clear. I was able to read all the cards. Like, we were joking about me and my old eyes, but my old eyes was able to read all the cards. I understood all the iconography, and everything was nice and clear. So,
And while the character cards do have text on them, because they do, there is a lot of language independence on the locations themselves. Outside of your character cards, there's no needed text.
Correct.
For how much is in this box, and then the expansion, the cold water, I believe, was 25 or 30 because it adds the extra player stuff in there. Coral Reefs was 40, but it adds in all those extra components.
Right. There's a lot
brand new board.
Yeah.
All those really neat coral. There's a lot in each box.
It's worth it. It's totally worth it.
Yeah. This is routinely in my top games. This is routinely in my top 20. I love this game.
Yeah, I know you do. So, like,
this is a 10 for me.
Right.
No
this
question.
this is a 10 for you. This is a solid 7. It's definitely one of those games that if it's on the table, you know, you're having a bad day and you want to play it, I'll be like, yeah, we can play that again. That'd be fine. Yeah, this is a good solid 7. I have no need to purchase it. It's not a style of game that I would have in my collection, but the fact that I know how to play it, and if someone wanted to play it, I'd be like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. This wasn't as crazy strong of a reaction as it was when I had you finally play Veiled Fate.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
the sheer fact that I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that we sat there and I gave it the second chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's time for Table, Shelf, or Trade. I've got 2.
I also have, I have 2.5.
I have 2 because I am really upset with one, and so I'm really going to kind of... Why don't you start this, puppy?
Okay. So we've talked about Far Away on a couple of episodes now. Far Away is from Pandasaurus Games, and it was designed by Johan Guppy and Corentin Lebras. They are a team that has worked together in the past, and Guppy is relatively newer. He's done games like From the Moon and Orichalcum, but you probably know Lebras more because he has done Takedo, Dead Cells, Arcades. He was part of the team for Draftosaurus. They're a really, really strong design team, and combined with Maxime Morin's art just is a great little package. So in Far Away, there is a theme. There's pages about the theme in the rulebook. What is it? I don't know. But you are going to be playing with small square cards, and on your turn, you are going to be simultaneously playing one of these square cards down. And once everybody has one on the table, you're going to flip it up, and whoever's played the lowest number is going to draft from the table, from a line that is there, their card that goes into their hand of 3 cards. And you're going to go around and keep doing that. The game itself is fairly straightforward that way, of play a card, get a card. It has the secondary layer that if the number of your card and the deck runs from 1 to 68 is higher than the card you played last round, then you get a small card that just sits out and it gives you a scoring condition or an extra icon or whatever. But where the game is incredible is that once you have played 8 cards, you're done. And then you flip everything over. And it plays in this first in, last out mentality of once everything is flipped and you go into scoring, you're going to flip the 8th card you played. And that will score based on what is face up. So those small little cards, the sanctuary cards, and itself, because it's the only square card that is available in your row. Once you score that, you're just going to keep going. So you're essentially unwinding the chain of cards that you have already played. And it has this really neat idea of, am I going to be able to actually score the card that I'm playing? It's so cool. And there's a really small decision space. I have 3 cards in my hand. Which one am I going to play? And there's arguably not a ton of player interaction outside of who's going to get to their card first. But it's so interesting every time because you do have that off-turn angst of, oh, I hope Scott doesn't take the card I need. Or it's that same like, I cannot believe that I got this many icons. It has push your luck in it. because especially when you're looking at those small cards, those sanctuary cards, you're just hoping to get out another icon because those cards are always active. So they can pump up your 7th and 8th cards. Some really, really cool ideas in this game that are a few little cards, some icons, and some really great production because everything is set up to be vision friendly with clean iconography. There is no text, so it is a language independent game. All you need to know is numbers and understand essentially the symbology of this is what a slash means, this is what a point symbol is, etc. Absolutely phenomenal game. It is totally a shelf for me. It's a small box. It's got a very tiny expansion coming later this summer. Love Far Away.
Yeah, this was an absolute grand slam for me. I love good card games. It says 25 minutes on the box.
That's a dead lie.
That is a lie.
Maybe if you're playing with 6 people.
Maybe if you're playing with 6 people. The fact that you very quickly went over the iconography, if you've played games enough, you can figure it out. But even if you haven't,
it's not tough.
It's not tough. We played 2 games in under 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So phenomenal. You look at the little biomes and see like the civilizations. And I've looked at this game before. It's gone. I've been in game stores, have seen it, and been like, I know he has it. I'm gonna wait. This will be a shelf. Since I have the free time, I probably, very honestly, will probably go and pick this up sometime tomorrow. Because such a good game. I don't know if any of my friends in Fort Wayne have it. I know that my friends in Goshen don't have it.
And the size of it is just toss in a pocket and go.
Right.
Because you could put those 2 little decks in a small bag. You don't need the box.
You don't need the box. And you don't even need the scoring pad. The scoring pad's very easy. Because you're like literally going
card 1, card 2.
Yeah. And that's ingenious. Mm-hmm. The fact of setting everything up because, you want to go in numerical order because you get those sanctuary cards, but then you don't get the resources that you need to power up the ones that give you a lot of points. Mm. Such a cool game.
That tension of, do I try and play a high number early, knowing that I'm not going to be able to get a sanctuary card off of it on my following turn most likely, but it means I can probably get it to score. Mm-hmm. And doing that dip and dive of, you don't need to have 7 sanctuary cards in front of you.
Nope.
But so long as you have 3 to 5, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
So
I lost the first game, won the second game, and that was literally because I sat there and did that exact thing. It was like, oh, here's these 2 really high ones. Mm-hmm. One's worth 12, one's worth 14. If I can pull these off, well, I've got the cards I need.
Yeah.
The other card I drew was what I needed to at least get this started with. I just have to make sure that those are the things that I grab. Phenomenal.
My only issue with it, and the reason it's not a 10, this is a very strong 9.
Oh, this is a 9, yeah.
Is that our first game, I had you by 40 points. Mm-hmm. Our second game, you beat me by 8.
Yeah.
And part of that is some of the tension of, what card do I want? How am I going to play my hand? But part of it as well was my issue with any type of card game of, it just didn't come up.
This didn't come up. Yeah. Well,
because had a single copy come up for you, you would have been up like 30 points. Oh. And had a little weird pineapple thing come up for me, I would have been up another 30 points.
Oh, yeah. The scores would have been way higher. Yeah.
So it does have that as what I can call a quote unquote issue, but man, it's a 10-minute game.
Yeah. Such a minor issue.
This is in there with Q-Birds for me.
That's it. Oh yeah. That is, hey, I need to talk to you. Let's go to the coffee shop, grab Far and Away. So we sit there and play and talk.
Q-Birds is, I think, more approachable.
Yes.
Because people are just going to be like, so I just play a bird? Yep, that's all you do.
Just play bird.
And Far Away is a little more gamery.
Yeah, this is the coffee game I want to play with my gamer friends. Mm-hmm. Q-Birds is, hey, we're going to play this cute little game and it doesn't take a lot of thinking.
Far Away's real strong.
Oh, such a good game.
So what's your first one? What'd you bring?
Yeah, so I'm going to do my trade first. I don't think I've ever had this happen. I picked up Comic Hunters. Came out 2020. Came out from Arcade Wonders. Designer was Robert Solano.
So if we're talking Comic Hunters, the reason it came out in 2020 is because it had originally a Brazilian release.
Okay.
So this is a Brazilian design team, and for those of you that don't know, Brazil is really tough to get board games out of. It's really hard to get board games into as well. There's a lot of weird import laws, so they kind of struggle to interact with the rest of the world on a intellectual property level when it comes to board gaming.
Okay.
So that should tell you, like, it can be really tough to get gaming in there. This originally released in Brazil, and they got the rights for the license incredibly cheaply, and then it was really expensive on an import market until Spin Master brought it out at this past Gen Con. Now you can go.
I have never opened up a game, and it's Marvel superheroes. It's comic books. These are titles and issues
Golden Age comics
that I have seen before, and the components are absolute garbage. I literally opened it up. I looked at all the cards. I was like, okay, they're okay card stock. And then I saw the tokens that are supposed to be used and went, you've got to be expletive kidding me. And I put it back in the box, and because I've opened it, it's mine now, but it won't be for very long because I will trade it. I have never, ever had seen something like that and just been like, I have no desire.
Production quality can kill a game. And when that game came out, it was announced at $30. I knew exactly what was happening. And the word around Gen Con was not great. Because while the game is supposedly very fun, I have not interacted with it because of that production quality issue.
Yeah. Thankfully, I didn't spend $30 for the game. It was cheaper than that.
Which is a real shame because they went out of their way. They licensed all those original Thor and Daredevil and Spider-Man and Avenger. Like, they are Golden Age comic covers.
Yeah.
And it is specifically Marvel. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you sit there, you look at that, like, the licensing on that had to be more expensive. But they kept the price down on the box, and it shows.
Yeah. I have, like I've said, I've never in my entire existence opened up a thing and saw what I had and went, nope.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Super bummer.
Sorry, man.
So, I mean, someone will enjoy it. It just won't be me. What's your other game?
So I have kind of cheated. I said I brought 2.5.
Yeah, you did say 2.5. Is it because one's an expansion for it?
No, they are two totally separate games.
Oh, Lord.
That use the same general system, but they are teeny tiny boxes.
Okay.
I also picked these up at Gen Con.
Uh-huh.
They are from our friends over at Lucky Duck.
Oh.
That is Tranquility.
Oh, I love Tranquility and the Ascent.
And Tranquility the Ascent.
Oh my God, those games are phenomenal.
Sure, let's discuss.
Okay, I know that the mechanism. So I'm guessing this is a trade for you.
This is a weak table.
Okay, so you're at that 4 range.
I'm at that 5. So before we get into it, let's talk about the game. So the original Tranquility, you are trying to get a line of ships going to the sun. There's theme. I don't know.
It's you're going through a journey, how I've seen it, how it looks like when you actually look at everything, one island to another island.
Right. But what's important is you are going to set out a grid of frame cards that will allow for a 6x6 grid of cards to be built inside of it. And the cards themselves range from 1 to 80. And then there are other options based on the little mini expansions within the box. And the entire point of the game is just simply get the cards to number 1 to 80 up and to the right. And so you are playing cards into this grid blindly in the sense of, I'm holding number 44. I'm going to put it roughly here because I don't know if 45 or 43 are even going to exist in this game. Mm-hmm. So it has that placement tension of where am I going to go. You also have to find a start card and finish card. Mm-hmm. And so long as you're able to fill the grid by the end of the game, you win. Because the trick on the game is when you play a card, whatever card is next to it, you have to discard that many cards out of your hand. Mm-hmm. So
you want a small gap.
You want as small of a gap as possible, but there's 80 numbers for 36 spots. Mm-hmm. So you have to be very smart about the way you discard because you're only ever allowed to discard a maximum of 5 cards. Again, there's some little wiggle room in there with some other rules, but generally speaking, you need that 43 to be within 38 to 48. And that's going to eat up your entire hand. And so if the game finishes by it actually filling the grid, great. But if you run out of cards to be able to discard, or you can't legally place a card because everything in your hand is out of what's available, you're done. You're sunk. And if you have failed to put out a start and a finish card, you've also lost. So there's a lot of need going on. There's a lot of setup going on. Getting that frame and constantly adjusting that frame because it's just loose cards. And I don't know about you, but for me, I need the cards to be straight. I need them to be whatever. Great. All the cards do have this really neat art on it where they are essentially symmetrical across a horizon line because one side is daytime and the other side is nighttime. And there's a set of variant rules where you have to play them where one player is the daytime side and the other player is the nighttime side. And you have to arrange them specifically with the arc of the sun.
That seems like a lot.
There's some interesting rules. And even if you throw in the wild cards that just this card fits anywhere and it only costs one card to discard because it's assumed. I like the idea of the game. I don't like the game.
I like the regular Tranquility more than Tranquility the Ascent because I think the Ascent is a lot harder.
The Ascent is a lot harder. I actually enjoy the Ascent more, which is ironic. Because they use these weird triangle cards for the base row, and then they have, they're just square cards, but they're rotated.
Yeah.
And you are building a layer of mountain range that has to go from 1 to whatever the final peak is, but you actually have to build a 9-level pyramid, I believe, and the numbers range up to 13 or 14. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it essentially is that same system, but it also adds in other colors. So you need to vary the colors that can be played. The problem I have with both of them is they're weirdly a lot to set up. They're weird to teach, and there's just so much luck.
There's a lot of luck. If you don't like set up for Tranquility, I just don't use the frame cards. I put like where the edges are, like the 2 corner edges. The other rule mechanic that you didn't put down because yes, if you get that start card, you have to play the start card. You also then collectively as a group have to throw so many cards away.
That's right. You have to can 8 cards as a group.
You have to can 8 cards, so that's where it gets really interesting because you're like, I don't think you have to do that with the finish card because the finish card, someone has to have a finish card in their hand when you get it done.
And there's only so many copies of each because there's a finish card per person, I think. It's something like that. These solo rules are interesting because for that start card discard, it actually says draw a whole bunch of extra cards and
then
discard 8 out. So they both have solo modes. The solo modes are both very strong for what the games are. I think I give Base Tranquility a 5. I'm not going to sit there and say, like, I'm never going to play it, but it's not one I'm going to be super stoked. Like, I'm not going to be mega jazzed to play it. I would rather play the Ascent just because if I am playing that, I like the extra brain churn of what it needs. But I have beaten Tranquility. I'm not sure I've ever beaten the Ascent.
Okay. I would be the other way. I enjoy Tranquility more than the Ascent. So I'd probably give Ascent a 5, where Tranquility, the original, would be much higher.
Now that said, the boxes are these tiny little cubes. They fit everything you need in there.
Which is always great.
For talking just simple card games away for this segment, the production's very strong. The art is very good. Like, I get a little meh at the end of the game. I'm like, okay, great, we won. I feel like it was painful to discard a lot of cards, but we made it work. And when I've lost, it's been, the cards just didn't come up.
Gotcha.
And I think that's why I like the Ascent more, is that there's more player agency with that because there are the 3 colors. There are more ways to make things work. The fact that you're building 3 peaks allows you to...
Aren't you trying to also get goats up on them or something like that?
That's if you're playing the hard mode.
Okay.
And that I've definitely never won. But there's some really neat ideas in both of these boxes. And I can't sit here and say you should never pick them up or play them because I think each one is like $12, $15.
Oh, yeah.
These are not expensive. They're not huge. They are something that you could easily take on a trip. They play in 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, they don't take that long at all.
It just takes a lot of table space.
It does.
For the game to size ratio, it is way out of whack.
I would agree.
But yeah, I would give these both tables. They're fun, but they certainly are not my favorite games.
I understand that completely. My other game for Table Shelf and Trade is an absolute shelf because I have kickstarted it and I have every expansion, and as soon as they announce the next expansion, I know I will kickstart that one as well. And that was published by Good Games Publishing out of Australia, and that would be the 2017 game Unfair. I adore Unfair. I did not care for the Funfair version.
The nice version?
The nice version, because I'm sorry, they just get rid of the downswing, the bad stuff. It's literally just nothing but good stuff. You are trying to build a theme park. You have so much space to do it that you can build your attractions. Each attraction only takes 1 space in your theme park. And it has different things that you can add modifiers to them, make them worth more points, make them give you more money, XYZ, you get staff, everything like that, all the fun stuff. What I really enjoy is the modularity. When the game first came out, they were only going to have have 4 different theme parks. So if you were playing a 4-player game, you used all 4 of the original pieces. The Kickstarter did well enough that they added 2 more, and they're doing one for every letter of the alphabet. So eventually they will get all 26. I think right now they're at 18. I think they're getting ready to set out the next 15 through 18. So
because they've had multiple Kickstarters for this.
Yes, they have done 3 so far.
Okay.
Base game and 2 expansions. The nice thing is that when you start this game, there are letter tiles. They all get thrown into a bag and everybody draws one. And depending on what those are the expansion portions that you're using, and then everything gets shuffled in. So there is a bit of gotta work on. So there's going to be a little bit of, it's going to take some time to actually set stuff up.
It also sounds like there's a lot of, you need the person who is owning or teaching the game to know everything, because I don't want to know every letter's worth of rules.
Exactly. But like the fact that you could get the base game and just work on those 6, that's great. The beautiful thing is, like, based on your people that are playing at the game, like, I know you don't like Take That, so I wouldn't use Ninja or Gangster, because I know there's several Take That elements. I mean, there's still one in Pirate, but like if we were playing a 2-player game, then we wouldn't play Pirate either. Yeah. We would just use Jungle, Robot, or Vampire. You can cater the game to the people that you know, because each one plays just differently enough that you have a totally different experience. And because of how many different letters of the alphabet are currently out there just for the game, because that's 14, you've got lots of modularity.
And you know I love modularity in my games. So I've never played this.
Okay.
Part of it is it has the letters CMON on it. And
I understand.
And that's nothing against their games, but again, like CGE and how I mentioned that earlier, almost all their games have fallen flat for me. Okay. They've just never been my thing. You add on there's a reputation for meanness and Take That in the game, and I'm out there.
Right.
And then you add in the last part of it, that it is around theme parks and carnivals and all that. And outside of using a carnival in a horror setting for role-playing games, I don't particularly like them.
Oh, really?
Like, I can go to Disneyland and have a lot of fun because it's Disney and it's my wife and all the things. But I actually really don't care for theme parks. And so anytime a theme park game has come out, Steam Park or Mysterium Park or Tenpenny Park or Park, because everything, Barron Park, I hate Barron Park. I love me some Phil Walker Harding. I hate Barron Park. So that theme puts me off. It's a publisher that I have a very mixed record with, and it's meanness. And then there's all these extra, it is interesting to hear the modularity and what it needs out of it. But to me, it sounds like the way I talk to you about Root.
Oh, okay.
Where I know all the rules. You don't need to know them all, but I got to know everything depending on what happens.
Gotcha. The nice thing is that the rules are very simple. I've just always have dug it.
Fair. I will certainly play it, but it could be a good contender for why did I play that?
You know what? I've been looking for things for that reason, so I bet you I'm going to end up pulling it out.
All right. Well, on that...
I did not realize that was CMON.
Yeah.
I know it from Good Games.
So
that was the main one that did the thing, and then CMON added themselves
licensed
onto it.
And helped do all that. Which again, when you're looking at all the extra content and all the extra stuff, there's a reason. Like, it's CMON money.
Yep.
But yeah. Now that said, Good Games is a publisher that I am almost 100% like, hey, I love your games on.
Yep.
So, it could be an interesting experience with us.
Star Tycoon wasn't your favorite, but...
No, but Land vs. Sea is so good, and I am frothing waiting for that expansion.
Oh, nice.
Man, I want that expansion. So I just had the ducts and everything cleaned in the house. So let's go ahead and talk about our HVAC games. What games are you heating and cooling on? I've brought one for each.
I did as well.
What would you like to start with?
Since I currently have my legs wrapped up in a hoodie because they're still freezing, I'm going to start with Cool Down.
Cool. Let's start there.
I picked up this game thinking I was going to enjoy it more because it is a worker placement game. It's very quickly, honestly, probably going to go to another owner because as much as I like worker placement games, Alma Mater is just not enough for me. It was published by Plan B Games and Arclight Games. I love the theming. I love the idea of it. I think it's a really neat game, but it's not neat enough. Like, it doesn't do anything that makes me go, I want to play this more. The board's very neat. It looks like a college campus. I love the book tokens. I mean, those are really, really cool. I've played Alma Mater twice, and I'm good.
So you have not picked up the expansion.
No, there's an expansion?
There is. So I have never played Alma Mater. I have heard decent things about this game, but I have heard the expansion helps it out. But what I have largely heard about Alma Mater is it's, at the end of the day, an okay game.
Okay's not good enough.
It's just not good enough.
What are you cooling on?
This one hurts.
Oh, no.
It does. So I love Nemesis. Mm-hmm. But what I realized after owning both Nemesis and Lockdown, and I have Retaliation coming, is that when it comes to Awakened Realms, I need one of their games. Now, Nemesis is, again, a bit of a bob and weave and dodge because there's enough there, but I don't need Etherfield. I don't need Tainted Grail. I don't need any of their other stuff because Nemesis does everything I want, and then I have the modularity between all the games.
Yeah.
So when they announced their Awakened Realms Lite line, I thought, ooh, okay, so Awakened Realms as a developer with their component quality, let's see what they can do.
Really?
And this is Tamashii Chronicle of Ascend.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I was so incredibly stoked when it got announced originally as Gaijin, and then they worked with a cultural consultant and realized that's not the best name, so let's go this route. And the incredibly clunky title isn't just a translation thing. The Chronicle of Ascend is talking about the rise of this evil AI named Ascend. So it's a weird name, beautiful theme, it's gorgeous. Like, look at some of these minis.
Oh, you've shown me these minis. These minis are phenomenal.
They're fantastic, and they're so cool, and there's so many little details. And the theme of the game is that you have awoken into a body, and through the course of the game, you are able to transfer your consciousness between other bodies. And each body has its own particular strengths. So one could be faster, one could be stronger, one could hack faster, whatever. It is a large campaign game that is scenario driven, and all the scenarios can be played independently of each other, but it wants you to play through the campaign in a way to unlock things and do stuff. As far as rules and content go, I think slapping the light label on this is misleading because no, it's not as heavy as something like Tainted Grail or Lords of Hellas, but this is not a nothing game. There's a lot going on in here. Mm-hmm. What I've ultimately found is even though this can play up to 4 players, I want to play it solo. And this is a ton to set up. There's all the tiles you need to lay out. There's all the tokens that need to go out. There's all this stuff. I created a photo layout of here's how to store the box that is part of the Tamashii Facebook group that I am still having people thank me for almost a year later because that's how rough it was to put away. It's gorgeous. But as we shift forward and we shift into, I need to play a lot more games for doing the podcast or whatever, this one I haven't tabled it in over a year. I don't particularly want to because even though relearning the game isn't a lot, it takes a ton of space. It's a lot of rules. There's a lot going on. And now I have Freedom 5. Freedom 5 booted Tamashii off my table and probably out of my collection at this point. Not because they are remotely similar to each other, but if I'm going to play a big, overwhelming game on my table by myself,
you're going to choose Freedom 5.
That's Freedom 5. This one hurts. I was so excited. This was one of those, I bought myself a board game for my birthday.
Yeah.
This is one of the ones.
I remember when it came in, you were like, Scott, look at this. Like, trying to get you to, us go do our things. It took you a while because you wanted me to see all of it.
I think there's a very good game here.
Oh, yeah.
I just haven't gotten to explore it the way I want to, and at this point, I don't have the time for it. That's it.
Yeah, that pretty much means it's going to sit on ice. Ooh.
Also, it has a really obnoxious box. I hate this box lid. Why is it not a full lid? I hate this.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Anyways, that's just me picking up production now. Okay, now that we have moved through my disappointment, what are you heating up on? What is coming back to life, or what are you just getting more excited about?
Honestly, getting really more excited about Frosthaven, because as much as I know you don't care for the game, just because of its mechanics and everything
Many
like
reasons,
that.
but
you've got
you enjoy you.
Yeah, exactly. If somehow you don't know about Frosthaven and Gloomhaven and everything like that, Cephalofair Games, when they came out with Gloomhaven, I missed it on the crowdfunding pages and everything like that. A little kickery of myself that I didn't.
It's more that you should be upset that we weren't as tight now as we were when it originally came out, because I had a second print of Kickstarter with the broken token inside of it, and I sold it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you get a starting group of 6 adventurers. Now, the difference between Gloomhaven and Frosthaven is that in Gloomhaven, you chose a person and that was your person. In Frosthaven, you are a mercenary group and that group can rotate. So like I can play character A, and if I get bored, I can go pick up
You don't
character
always
5.
have to be the mage.
Yes, you don't always have to be the mage. It's like, oh hey, do you want to try this for a while? Then yeah. The nice thing is that you very easily can kind of tell what the playstyle is because the cards, your player A that you have that you use the basis on for your character, it tells you what your character is mainly going to do. This is how this character plays. This is the difficulty of this character. These are the things that you need to be aware of when you're going to be doing this. So my group that I play with, we've picked the characters, like we start with these characters and then we're like, yeah, this is the one that I like the most. And so like as characters have been unlocked, we've been like, okay, this is cool. I'm taking this one. This is clearly my play style. I want to snake this one. Now, the difference between Gloomhaven and Frosthaven. In Gloomhaven, when you completed a character's end quest, you would unlock a new character because that one would go away and a new person would come in to fill the space. Mm-hmm. In Frosthaven, that same thing happens where you complete a mission, but instead of you receiving a new character, when that character retires, you are putting a new building into the city and you are making the village of Frosthaven better. Now, how do you get new characters? Well, that happens through gameplay, whether it's building a certain building to its completion or a certain level, or while you are out running around making decisions because you have road events, depending on what season it is, of people you will interact with. That is how you unlock people. Now, our group, we have had a bit of a stalemate. We have not unlocked anybody new for quite some time. We're all like, what do we need to do? What are we trying to finish? And so we're trying to finish the one because we're like, this should unlock. We think this will probably unlock something. We're just hitting a wall and it's kind of banging our head against it. But we know we could very easily just like, okay, put this one to bed for a little bit. Let's try this one. For this last time, we decided to grab Gloomhaven characters and I ported one in and I'm playing it and I'm like, okay, this is fun. And we've got ideas. We're like, okay, if this one doesn't work, we'll try this one. And it's neat because we're revisiting Gloomhaven within the Frosthaven setting, and you can go onto the website and get the character cards updates.
Nice.
You don't have to buy the new box. If you buy the new box, great, you're going to have that. I was like, oh, there's updates. Cool to me. And I popped up and I saw it. And I was like, oh, this is really sweet. I like what this does. This means I can pull this off relatively quickly. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And very, very excited. It definitely makes me want to make sure. I hate it when I have to miss a game day with those guys. It's going to make me regret it more because now we're kind of mixing the two games together. So
very cool.
Yeah. What are you warming up to?
So it's ironic that I brought these two because you're going to sit here and say, wait, you said that Tamashii was too much and you're falling off of it, but now you're talking about this game?
Oh, great. This should be interesting.
I love Vital Lacerda as a designer. Okay. I love half of his designs.
Okay.
Because he designs very broadly within two categories. And that is your Lisboa Vinouche escape plan of you only have a certain amount of rounds and you need to accomplish everything you need to accomplish and all the Lacerda-y things within a very set amount of time.
Okay.
You know what? We talked about that on our last episode, actually, of how does a game end and round length and all that. Yes. Something that I feel too constrained by. And when it comes to his games, those constraints feel even more restricting to me. I will play Lisboa again. I probably won't play the other two again.
Okay.
But his other half, and what I enjoy, is when he just says, here is your game. Here's all the things to do. Play until a game end trigger has gone off.
Yeah.
I have not played Weather Machine or Inventions yet. I have Inventions back there.
Oh, yeah, that was one I wanted to pick up at Gen Con. Oh, Lord, that's a box.
We're talking On Mars.
Currently, On Mars is on your table.
Has to be the most complex game he has created, even knowing that I haven't played the other two. I really want to try Speakeasy when it comes out, and there's a lot of very cool stuff. On Mars is a worker placement game where you are terraforming Mars to a not livable state, but into a, here are the colony structures and here's everything that needs to happen to make sure that humanity can have a presence and make sure we proceed. This game, its solo mode, does not reflect the multiplayer mode in the slightest, which means that I can't use it to refresh myself on the game because now I'm doing all this logistical stuff off of somebody else. But it is, all right, here's the action. This one requires a worker, unless this condition is in place, which case it doesn't need a worker, unless this other condition is in place, which means you don't need a worker, except you do need a worker, except you don't need a worker, but if you have these crystals, you don't need anything. That is a 40-minute explanation to teach the game. By far the longest teach I have in my collection. It is a 3+ hour game. Every interaction matters. Every choice makes a difference. And there's not a ton of that, like, I can't believe I made this mistake in hour 1 or on turn 1 the way that some like Food Chain Magnate has. But you need to be consistent and clear with your strategy. Because if you're not careful, you might be left on the space station with no way to get back to Mars until the top of the next round. And if you're really unlucky, that round might not happen. So your positioning for where you can take actions is very important. As the structure level across Mars raises, you're pushing the end of the game, but you're also pushing the things that you can do. If Scott has a technology, I can borrow his technology and he gets resources for it, which is a big deal in the game. But it also means that now I'm advancing my own interests at the expense of what you've already bought. There's incredible player interaction with this. So I originally cooled on it because I don't want to do that teach again. Then the flood happened. So I was already kind of gearing up to be more excited about the game anyway. It just was triggering in my head where I realized that On Mars is in that little section of games that I have, which, ironic, seeing the size of the boxes.
It's massive, y'all.
But that idea of, so long as I frame this, that I'm only going to be able to play this in a very rare occasion, maybe once a year. And that I am willing to sit down and do that enormous teach because it is so long to teach this game. It is so rewarding on the back end. That gameplay experience is so good. Where I have these in my shelves, it got wet. And I was considering trading it or selling it. Thankfully, I managed to dry it out perfectly. But Scott, you can see it's all stained on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
It took a lot to make this still look perfect. But I also kind of accidentally traded for the very hard to get expansion. And that has the title of a somewhat cooperative expansion because it is 4 more modules to play with this, where you can play it as a one versus many game. You can play it as a co-op. There is a new solo mode and there's a semi-cooperative scenario. So there's just more ways to play the game. And I was originally planning on just selling the whole thing together until it got stained and wet like this. And thank God that Alien Invasion was sitting still in its shrink wrap on top of all of them, because that meant that this is the only damage. But this alone made me realize, I don't want to sell it to anybody. Man, I want to play it again. I really want to play this again. Like, I really want to play this again. And this is not one that will come out often. This is nothing compares to what this does. This is the heaviest game I own. This is the most complex thing that I will probably ever own. And it's so good. And the more I think about it, and the more I'm past that original teach of, God, that took so long and it was brutal to learn. It's a really, really good play experience, though.
Interesting.
So, yeah, this is the one I'm warming back up on. Again, ironic, because it's on Mars.
And there's no atmosphere.
Thank you so much for listening to us. If you'd like to get in touch with Scott and myself or any of the other theater geeks in relation to Board All the Time, you can hit us up at boardallthetimegaming@gmail.com, on Blue Sky at boardallthetime.bsky.social. You can visit us on our website, boardallthetime.com, where we have a newsletter sign-up, feedback form, archive of our episodes, and links to all of our social media, including our Facebook page. You can also join us on our Discord. The server link is in the episode notes. And finally, we'd like to ask that if you enjoy our episodes, please give us the like and follow us on your platform of choice. We know you hear that a lot, but after doing this many episodes, we really do now understand how important it is to help the show grow. Regardless, thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
At this time, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Do you like shiny math rocks? I like shiny math rocks. Go to Robin's Nerd Supplies and use the code TheaterGeeks and receive 10% off your order. Links to the website is in our episode notes. Also, we'd like to thank EcoL Press, a local printing company here in the South Bend area. Happens to be a union shop, and they do everything for your gaming printing needs. And what's so nice is that they're environmentally friendly. You will also be able to check them out in our episode notes.
Well, that's Scott. It is incredibly cold out. It is thankfully a clear night, but do you have a coat?
I'm wearing it.
You should get home.
Maybe. I'm gonna live in your basement.
See you at work.
I mean, I guess I do have Great Western Trail. I have Great Western Trail,